Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about building a scalable, healthy practice with subscriptions. I'm going to wait a minute here while we have some more friends joining us. Hello to everyone joining. If you want to drop a note in the comments, tell us where you're joining us from. I always like to see where everyone's from. Really appreciate you taking a little time out to join us. So we're estimating this is probably about 20 to 30 minutes at most. So hopefully you've got a snack or a hot cup of tea or coffee and we can just hang out for a little bit. So building a scalable practice with subscriptions. One of the things that we are interested about at, hello, yes. Awesome, we're having a few more people join, great. So I'll start out with introducing myself and then I'll let my guest introduce himself. I'm Kristin Tyler. I'm an attorney. I'm based in Las Vegas, Nevada. My background is working in estate planning and probate, but more excitingly, I am one of the co-founders of a company called LAWCLERK. At LAWCLERK, what we do in a real quick nutshell, we help match up busy attorneys, primarily solos and smalls, with our amazing network of freelance lawyers all across the US. So that's us in a nutshell. Of course, you can learn a whole bunch more at lawclerk.legal. I hope you'll visit us after the webinar. But before we launch into today's discussion about subscriptions, I wanted to thank Dan Lear for joining me and give you a chance to introduce yourself. Dan.
Thanks, Kristin. Hey, everybody. My name is Dan Lear. I'm an attorney by training as well, though I don't take it nearly as seriously or do it as well as Kristin does. I was a technology attorney for a number of years, and then more recently have been working in a number of businesses that help bridge the kind of technology gap between the tech world and lawyers and law firms. Today, I work for a company called Gravity Legal. We do payment processing and merchant services, so credit cards, debit cards, bank transfer, or ACH or e-check, whatever you call it, for lawyers and law firms. We help them reduce their accounts receivable, get paid faster, and generally smooth out the pain that is often related with the process of getting paid by your clients, which is, again, not the reason any of us went to law school, but actually to practice law and help people. So that's what we do. And I guess we can dive in. I was going to jump on the subscription piece, but I'll hold it back just a little bit so we can go at it together.
Sounds good. So I think this whole conversation sparked today because Dan and I always enjoy talking about alternative business models for law firms. Certainly our, the partners that we work with at each of our companies, that's a regular conversation that we're having is different business models. So I was really excited to have this conversation with Dan today. I'm having a conversation next week with Dave Ahrens of Unbundled Attorney about unbundled services as a different business model. So if you're interested in these topics, I would also invite you to join me next week. But today we're focusing on subscriptions. And there's us again. We've already covered our introductions. So Dan, I think I'll let you tee this one up on why subscriptions can be a win-win-win.
Sure, and we're gonna dive into this, but we're all familiar with the notion of a subscription. Many of us, have Netflix, or even before the days of the internet. I know there are still a few people around who remember that. We're getting magazines by subscription, or those crazy CD deals that you used to see in the newspaper, where you'd get a bunch up front and then get one every week. So we understand this model, and again, it's increasingly popular in the technology world. But it's not something I think that a lot of lawyers have thought through, or it's the law firm model has you've typically billed really only one of two ways, and the second way is even more is newer, not as new as subscription. But the first is sit down, bill hours, figure out an hourly rate, charge for those hours, and kind of call it good. And then flat fees have come on the scene in the last little while. So this notion of using a subscription model either to bill your clients or even more broadly in your practice is a little bit new, I think, to the law firm ecosystem. And Kristin, as you and I were putting our heads together and thinking, hey, we're talking subscriptions, you're talking subscriptions, we really realized that this model can be a big win for really a lot of the players that are involved in the law firm ecosystem. And we thought it'd be fun to jump on a webinar and chat about it. And so we've narrowed it down, or kind of isolated these three different groups for whom we think subscriptions are a big win. Of course, there are others, but these are the ones we want to walk through today. Kristin, did I summarize that well? What else would you add?
You did too. I would just add that, if anyone is wondering about the ethics of billing with the subscription, the key ethics rule to keep in mind is going to be model rule 1.5, which means that you have to just charge your client a reasonable rate. So what's reasonable is going to vary depending on the volume of work you're doing, the sophistication of the work, et cetera, et cetera. Only you can be the judge of that. But if you're wondering about that, I'd encourage you to go take a look at model rule 1.5 when you're evaluating what's going to work best for you and your clients as you build in more subscriptions. So, one other
Kristin,
thing.
I was just going to chime in on the 1.5 piece just super quick. We'll get there at the end, but we have a subscription legal services resource center. And again, we'll provide you the link later. That's got a link both to a white paper about subscriptions and also a link to a podcast episode that we did with an ethics attorney, where we dive into some of this. So we can cover that later, but just wanted to say we've drilled down on that a bit as well.
That is super helpful. Yeah, that link is at the end. So before we jump into, I was going to invite people, if you want in the chat, I'd love to know what your practice area is, what your focus is, and if you're already working in subscriptions or not. If you want to share that in the chat, I'd love to see it. From my perspective, there's a lot of different practice areas that could think about implementing a subscription-based billing practice. Dan and I were talking about this leading up to the webinar, and some of those are obviously business related, outside general counsel, whether that's purely transactional or litigation. That would be a big one where we're seeing a lot of lawyers do this already and have great success. Dan, what are some of those other ones that you said you've seen some success with subscription already?
Yeah, certainly I think business is the most obvious one. What I've found interesting, I'd say a couple things, is the niches within business that lawyers have been able to identify and then exploit for a subscription model. So I know that there's a law firm out there that focuses solely on, it's Jason, I'm going to mispronounce his name, I think Fascolo, who's like the food lawyer, and he helps, I think he generally focuses on actually food producers, farmers, distributors, but he may also help restaurants. And I think that's a great example of sort of focusing in on a really specific niche and then identifying hey, these particular folks that I work with, they have a relatively fixed set of needs. And not only can I kind of figure out how to make things better for them by offering this in a nice little package, but I can also get some economies of scale and some revenue certainty by saying, hey, in fact, I can offer this package and I can do it in a way that is economically beneficial to me and also a good deal for you. And we'll talk about how those wins come in, but that's another one. The other big picture thing I'd simply say is, as I've talked with a number of different attorneys who do this, and again, Megan Xavier, who was the ethics attorney that we talked to, she offers an ethics legal services subscription plan. I think to a large degree, it's really bound by an attorney's creativity.
That's for sure. Yeah.
If you go into a divorce situation and say well, my job here is to kind of solve this discrete problem of separating these two people and then being done with it, you might not see an obvious subscription opportunity there. But if you instead say, hey, these people are going to have needs after they're separated, whether it's renegotiating the child support agreement or kind of renegotiating anything related to who the kids stay with and how that all works, a custody arrangement. And again, even in an uncontentious divorce, there are lots of ways that that you could potentially offer services on an ongoing basis. And you can figure out hey, instead of just charging you $5,000 up front for this divorce, why don't we think about a way to kind of spread that out and offer you services over time? It's just a matter of kind of thinking about how you want to be a part of this client's life. And maybe, again, family lawyers, they're more than happy to be done with it and walk away, but to be a part of this client's life for a longer period. And I'm sure, again, thinking about your work, Kristin, that could easily transition into an estate planning opportunity as well. So I think to a large degree, it's just really limited by an attorney's creativity to figure out how to offer these kinds of things. That's my quick take, at least.
For sure. Yeah. In my world with estate planning, we see it more on a yearly subscription where you pay a a fee once a year to get your plan reviewed and some limited scope of updates prepared depending on the situation. So, but looking at the chat, it looks like at least one of our guests should have been on the panel with us here. Dan Linden says that's what they do at his firm, at their firm, Outhouse Attorneys LLC. They provide fractional general counsel services for businesses. They're already working with subscription-based work, and that's awesome. So I'm glad you're joining us, Lyndon. Hopefully you're not bored by our conversation today, but awesome. Well, let's dive into it. So first up, subscription is a win for the clients. Let's dig into that one. If I can get the PowerPoint to work. There we go. So Dan, to me, subscriptions, I think, can be a win for a client if it opens the door to a relationship with an attorney sooner than otherwise it might have. I think a lot of people still, for a lot of reasons, understandably, are intimidated by the thought of hiring a lawyer, a mean, scary lawyer. They are reluctant, they put that off, and all too many folks with the best of intentions try to, implement DIY solutions, fix their own problems, go it alone, where they really would benefit from the advice and the counsel of a lawyer earlier on with whatever situation they're facing. And the fact of the matter is that getting proper legal advice sooner rather than later, probably in the long run, is going to save the client a ton of money because they're going to avoid bigger, messier problems that are much harder to unwind. That to me is one of the biggest wins from the client's perspective, is that they can get help sooner to hopefully avoid bigger problems down the road.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I always take things maybe to too high a level, but I really like to think about subscriptions as a way that, from an economic perspective, really enable folks who couldn't come up with that. I mean, to your point, there's the emotional fear. And I was actually, as you were talking, thinking, going to the lawyer is often, going to a lawyer is sometimes like going to the dentist. Like you're rarely excited to engage in that process. So there's the emotional challenge of getting over it. But then you add on that potentially a pretty significant economic challenge when you say, hey, client, I need to plunk down, $5K for a retainer or whatever. So it both, I think, can serve to reduce the anxiety, both emotional and financial. But I think it also, and this is where what gets exciting for me, is it creates an economic or business relationship that feels much more affordable to the client, and hopefully actually is more affordable, so that, to your point, not only can they actually meet with the lawyer, but they also, and we'll talk about this is I think something that a lot of lawyers really like. So it's really almost a win for the lawyers, but it also creates a much more casual and friendly relationship from the client's perspective, because they're not constantly like thinking, oh wow, I just spent and then again, this is a sad thing often, is I just spent 12 minutes with this person, right? That's 2 increments of their time that I'm going to get billed for.
Yeah.
Instead, you've already established this kind of nice window, or this nice space where the two of you can interact and really problem solve without the concern of like, what's this going to cost me on an hourly or even 6-minute increment basis. So I think clients like that, of course, they like the predictability.
Oh, yes.
For any of us who have ever hired lawyers, I have, Kristin, I'm sure you have, the surprise of getting a massive hourly bill when either the lawyer hasn't kept you informed about what they're doing, or like you didn't realize like how much they were doing. That's a real shock, and it's really expensive. And so the nice predictability of, hey, this is what I'm going to pay every month. I know that's what I'm going to pay. Clients really appreciate that as well.
Definitely a lot easier to plan for those as an ongoing, especially if you're working with a client that's a business expense. They can budget for that. It just becomes part of the ongoing overhead cost of doing business. So these are all great reasons to consider offering subscription services for your clients. And I think that clients are, in this current economic environment, geopolitical environment, everything that's going on, there's so much unknown and uncertainty that I think a lot of more clients are also going to start inquiring about relationships like this that will give them some certainty when it comes to at least their attorney's fees. And being able to offer those is going to be a huge marketing advantage for attorneys who are creative and willing to give them a try, which probably segues pretty nice to the next topic of looking at why subscriptions can be a win for attorneys. And I see we have maybe a question. I thought I saw it pop up. If not, if you want to type questions in the Q&A, we'd be happy to answer those there. But Dan, do you want to kick it off here? I kind of alluded to one of being able to offer a subscription can be a marketing strategy to differentiate yourself from other attorneys in town who are still billing hourly, and maybe a way for you to connect with more clients and win them over to get new business into your firm. That to me is a huge win for the attorney and their perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll let you take that one, Kristen, and I'll take the flip side of the one I just mentioned. We can come back and chat marketing, or I can cover it if you
Sure.
don't want to, but I wanted to just take the flip side of the comment I just made a minute ago, which is how it kind of de-escalates the relationship for the client. It also really, what I've heard from a number of attorneys that I've talked to who offer these types of subscriptions is it also creates a great relationship, or it changes the nature of the relationship for the attorney. So they can really kind of work with the client and problem solve with the client in a way that that they often aren't able to
Rather than being putting out fires all the time. Yeah.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
the client is more inclined to bring them problems ahead of time, to ask the attorney to help them kind of problem solve in a way that, they wait and wait and wait, either because they don't want to hire an attorney or because of the cost. And so a lot of attorneys that I've talked to have said they really appreciate how it changes the nature of the attorney-client relationship. And in fact, they often say, this is why I got into lawyering, right? It wasn't necessarily for people to bring me their broken thing and have me fix it, but like actually to be kind of a strategic partner with them and helping the client solve problems is really a big one. And then I can talk marketing, but you mentioned it already, so I was figuring you can roll with that one if you want.
Well, yeah, there again, it's a big advantage to you if you are able to offer something that every other attorney in town is not, by way of offering a subscription rate or flat fee or whatever alternative fee you're considering. That is going to make you stand head and shoulders above your competition, and in the long run help you win those clients over. Leading into the economics of it, of course, if probably what the realization rate of your firm is. What you bill hourly when you're doing hourly work. How much of that you typically actually collect. If your realization rate on your work is not as high as you want, that could be another opportunity for you to segue into subscription-based work. A lot of lawyers I talk to that do subscription work say, I would rather know with certainty I'm going to get paid this subscription rate for work every single month than be chasing clients for bills where I'm maybe only going to realize 80 to 85% of that work that I billed for. So that obviously can have huge financial implications for the attorney as they're trying to grow their firm and increase their revenue streams. What other, Dan, obviously you're the expert on the economics of all of this with your team at Gravity. What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was just going to say. Is it has I think, fantastic benefit. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest benefits. Is it smooths out that lumpy law firm revenue often. So like, hey, I'm going to have this much coming in every month. Gives you some consistency, can potentially allow you to grow and scale, because you can say, hey, I know I can now afford to hire an associate or engage just an associate on a freelance subscription basis, which is what I wanted to pivot to. But bring on an assistant or whatever it is, invest in technology, any of those things. And yeah, I wanted to jump on that and just quickly say, we at Gravity Legal, one of the reasons we've gotten really interested in subscriptions is because we built some technology that enables lawyers to set up these recurring billing arrangements, either using credit cards, debit cards, or even a bank transfer, where you don't have to worry about even sending out a bill every month. It just automatically takes care of it, which again, like, just dramatically reduces the time and energy that you might be spending in chasing money every month, be that even for subscriptions or otherwise. But Kristen, I did want to sort of tee up a softball for you and say, we've been talking a lot about the attorney-client benefits, but I know with your virtual subscription program, it's not necessarily about the client relationship so much as it is with the attorney engaging subscription legal help. So, like,
Sure.
do you want to speak to some of the benefits that come from that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, without going into a ton of detail, because we have a lot of details on our website, but we launched a virtual associate subscription program the 1st of January, and we're getting a huge response to that. Attorneys are really loving it. So what that means is that the attorney is able to work with one of our freelance lawyers in an ongoing subscription-based relationship in increments of 10 hours a month. So you say, I need 20 hours of help a month. I need 40 hours of help, et cetera, et cetera. You pay for those hours, and then you are working with this freelancer in a really committed, working relationships where they get to know you, they get to know your working style, your clients, your cases, et cetera. And it can really help you get that work done. So if maybe you've been holding back on hiring help, or you've been holding back on taking on more cases, even though they're knocking on your door, it's a great idea to consider if working with a virtual associate via a subscription-based plan is a good option for you to staff your firm, take on more cases, grow your revenue, et cetera. Because what it boils down to is that being able to work with a freelancer in a subscription style working relationship allows you to still be very flexible with how much help you need, when you need it, and what type of help you need. Maybe the next 4 months, you've got trial coming up, and so you need a litigator to come in and help with the final phases of discovery and trial prep. But in the summer, you tend to do more transactional work of some nature. You can really staff up or down with the right type of freelancer and get the exact kind of help you need in a very affordable manner. And to me, that's a total game changer for especially solo attorneys or small firms.
Yeah, it really strikes me actually, as you were talking about this, that as the potential buyer of this subscription offering, again, thinking about it akin to something like Netflix, or even if I were a client of a subscription legal service, the great thing about this is, again, it de-escalates or de-risks to some extent the risks of engaging someone, because you get to sort of set how much. You don't have to worry about hiring them full time or not. You get to set how much you're gonna use. You can cancel anytime, I imagine, or with some limited
That's
window.
right. 30-day notice. Yep. No, not long.
So it really gives you, again, a lot of the benefits that we were talking about as a client kind of get flipped over to the hiring lawyer in this case, which is super interesting, I think.
Yeah. We had a great question just come in from Lyndon asking, how does the 1099, meaning the independent contractor virtual associate, how does that comply with attorney-client privilege? So the way that complies is, number one, our freelancers are all attorneys, so they are bound by their underlying ethics duties and responsibilities to maintain attorney-client privilege. But the freelancer is working for you under your supervision. They actually are very limited in their scope. They're not able to do any work that causes them to engage in the practice of law. So, you are going to be supervising their work and overseeing that to make sure that they're following the rules. They're going to be bound by their already existing duty of confidentiality. And beyond that, on each and every project or each and every subscription working relationship, we do also require our freelance lawyers to also sign a confidentiality agreement for every single project. So we take it to another layer. So we've got several built-in layers to maintain confidentiality and make sure that privilege is being properly complied with. So hopefully that helps answer that question. But yeah, there's when you're looking at attorneys, whether you're looking for the attorney-client relationship or the attorney hiring a freelance lawyer, there's a lot of wins for them in considering subscription-based business models and moving their business forward and building on that. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the freelancers now that we've brought them up. I have had the great honor of meeting hundreds, if not thousands, of our freelance lawyers over the past few years. We have over 3,500 freelance lawyers in our network in all 50 states in all practice areas. And they are some really talented and incredibly experienced attorneys. And the thing that they really enjoy about, number one, working with LawClerk, and number two, working in this subscription style relationship is, again, for them, it also gives them some predictable revenue rather than just gig by gig and wondering how much work they're going to get in each month. So it gives them some predictability when they're coming to their own budget and deciding how much other work they want to take on from other attorneys. It also, the feedback we get overwhelmingly from career freelancers is that when they choose to work through a platform like LawClerk, they have a stronger confidence level that they're going to get paid for their work, because we charge the attorney for the work at the beginning of a project or at the beginning of a subscription, and we hold the funds with a third-party payment processor to make sure the freelancer gets paid when their work is completed. And so that gives them a lot of peace of mind, because as you can probably imagine, we've unfortunately heard stories of freelancers who get stiffed, or maybe they do a bunch of freelance work, they send out a bill, the hiring attorney thinks it's too high, so they only pay for a part of it. We hear those stories all the time. And we really strive to make sure that we avoid that situation, and that when the law clerk does good work, which they overwhelming majority do. I mean, of course, there's a few problems here and there, but they're pretty sporadic. But when the freelancer does complete the work and do it well, we make sure they get paid. And that's a huge advantage to the freelancer working through a platform like LawClerk, especially in a subscription-based relationship where you're working a lot of hours. Dan,
Yeah,
I don't know
I was just going to pile on and say it's the other thing I was thinking is if you've got like a double subscription situation, like a subscription law firm who's also working with a subscription associate, that can create a situation in which the subscription associate would really be exposed potentially to a very kind of specific and highly repeatable type of project, which can be great for training, which I know a lot of lawyers are looking for. But it also really lends itself nicely to kind of freelance chunks, because you have more predictability as a freelancer about what your hiring lawyer is going to dump on you, right? You know that it's
for sure.
generally going to be a certain amount of work. It's going to come in at a certain volume every month. So, the life of a freelancer can be lumpier than the life of a solo attorney or of a small firm attorney. And so the ability to have some predictability and surety about what's going to be coming in the door, how much you're going to work, what kind of work you're going to be doing, how fast you can crank it out, all of that can be a really nice benefit for the subscription freelance associate as well.
For sure. And keep in mind that these folks typically, they're not looking for full-time work. They, for a whole myriad of reasons, want a limited number of hours of work per week, per month. And so this is a great fit for them. And also if they are, maybe in a transition phase, they've moved cities or they're thinking about a different practice area, they'll often come on and do some freelance work with a more experienced attorney. And it can turn into kind of a mentorship type relationship as well, where you're just helping another lawyer as they're sharpening their skills and honing their skills. So that can be a great win as well. But and we have seen these subscription relationships lead to a full-time hire. Awesome. That's not going to be for every freelancer, again, because a lot of them don't want to work that quantity of hours, but this can really be a tool, a stepping stone of sorts. If you're looking for creative ways to scale your firm, get help in a flexible way that can be increased over time or decreased as you need it. So definitely, when you're thinking about subscription, don't only think about it in terms of clients and your firm, think about it in terms of the help that you need to power your firm as well.
Love it.
Love it. Well, as Dan has mentioned, we have a lot more resources available, both on subscription topics related to the work that Dan and his team are doing at Gravity Legal. You've heard me talk quite a bit about our virtual associate subscription program. If you want to learn more, that's the link to ours. We've got, if you like learning by video, we've got about a 30-minute YouTube video with our CEO where we go into the nitty-gritty details about how the program works. Dan, tell us a little bit about some of the resources that you're offering for attorneys who are trying to build subscription into their business model.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to the Subscription Resource Center, there's a few different things you'll find there. One is a 40-page, we put a lot of effort into it, white paper on really walking you through the nuts and bolts and steps of setting up a subscription legal services offering. We've got lots of examples in there. We jump into the ethics and answer a lot of the questions that folks have as they're kind of getting started and thinking about how to launch this type of a thing. We also actually put most of that content out on our blog as a series of blog posts.
Oh, great.
So
okay.
if you don't want to give us your email, if 40 pages feels like too much, you can get most of that content for free on the blog, and there's links to those posts there as well. And then we've also done a handful of podcast episodes. I am the host of a podcast called Financially Legal, with attorneys who offer subscription legal services or have otherwise thought about this problem. And you can get links to all of those episodes there as well. So that's what we've got there.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's helpful to folks.
I think it is. I'm a subscriber to your podcast, and you always have great conversations. Again, if you're fascinated by business models and thinking about creative different ways to do law better, you'll definitely want to subscribe to Dan's podcast. It's fantastic. So as always, we're happy to connect with you. If you have questions one-on-one, here's our emails. Of course, the websites, you can find us both on Twitter and other social media platforms. So if you have questions one-on-one, don't hesitate to reach out. We thank you very much for taking a part of your day to join us to think about subscriptions and all the ways that it can help clients, lawyers, and freelancers. Dan, thanks for being my partner in crime for this one. I always have a good time talking about the business of law with you. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite, Kristin.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh, and if you do have questions, I might have one or two more questions here coming in. I'll leave this screen up. Oh, just a thank you. You're welcome, Roger. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to sign off now. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.